Blood soaked the snow. Riley Ashford saw them first as shadows. 6 shadows moving wrong against the white. Too fluid. Too purposeful. Then the screams started. Not animal screams. Human screams. The kind that tear through a man's throat when something with teeth is tearing through his leg. She was 17 years old. She'd been alone on this mountain for 2 years. 20 meters from the tree line. 20 meters from anyone who'd notice if she died tonight. The rifle shook in her hands. The wolves turned, 6 pairs of eyes blazing like demons in the moonlight. And she saw him. A man, leather vest shredded, left leg torn to the bone, crawling through his own blood, leaving a trail of red across virgin white. He locked eyes with her. Run, his voice was broken glass and gravel. Save yourself. Riley's finger found the trigger. That single bullet changed everything. 3 weeks later, 100 motorcycles would thunder up her mountain. But right now, in this frozen moment between heartbeats, she had 10 seconds to choose. Let him die or become the girl who saved a Hell's Angel from the wolves. The wolves moved first. The alpha, massive and scarred lips pulled back over teeth designed to crush bone, launched at the man. Riley didn't think. Her father's voice echoed through her skull. Breathe, aim, squeeze. The shot cracked across the canyon like God's own whip. The bullet missed the wolf by inches. Intentionally. Her father had taught her that too. Fire warning shots first. Save the killing for when there's no other choice. The alpha skidded to a halt. Turn those hellfire eyes on her instead. Get back, Riley Ash's voice tore from somewhere deep. Somewhere she didn't know existed. Get back. She chambered another round. The sound was beautiful. Mechanical. Final. The wolves hesitated. They weren't used to prey that fought back. Weren't used to the crack of gunfire echoing off stone walls. The alpha's ears went flat. A growl rumbled from his chest, vibrating through the frozen air. Riley fired into the sky. The pack scattered. Not far, just far enough. Into the tree line where darkness swallowed them whole. But they didn't leave. She could see them watching. 6 pairs of golden fire suspended in shadow, patient as death itself. The man on the ground groaned. Riley dropped to her knees beside him. Her breath came in ragged clouds. Blood pooled around him so thick it looked black in the moonlight. His face was a mess of cuts and bruises, cheekbone split, eye swelling shut. But it was his leg that made her stomach drop. The wolves had got in at him good. From knee to ankle, flesh hung in ribbons, muscle exposed, maybe bone, maybe worse. Blood was still pumping out in steady pulses. If she didn't stop it in the next few minutes, he was dead. But it was his vest that froze her. Black leather. Even torn and bloody, she could read the patches. Hell's Angels. Yellowstone chapter. And a name tag over his heart, half obscured by crimson. Ironside. Oh God, Riley whispered. Oh God, oh God. She'd heard stories about these men. Everyone in rural Wyoming had. They were legends, myths, monsters depending on who was telling the tale. Her father had served one of them coffee once years ago and talked about it for months afterward like he'd met a ghost. Now one of them was dying in front of her. Hey, she grabbed his face, forcing his eyes to focus. Blood smeared across her palms. Hey, can you hear me? His eyes cracked open, gray, bloodshot, full of pain that went deeper than the physical. Leave me, he rasped. Wolves, they'll come back. Shut up. Riley was already calculating. Her snowmobile was 50 yards away. He had to weigh over 200 pounds. The wolves were regrouping in the trees. She could hear them. Soft footfalls in the snow, the occasional growl, the click of teeth. Can you move at all? Kid, I said leave. And I said shut up. She grabbed his arm and hauled it over her shoulders. The man screamed, a raw animal sound that echoed off the mountains, sound that would bring the wolves back faster. Riley didn't stop, couldn't stop. If she stopped, they were both dead. Move your legs, she commanded. Push with your good leg, now. He tried. God help him, he tried. Every inch was agony, every step a war against his own broken body. Riley half carried, half dragged him through the snow, her muscles burning, her lungs screaming for air. Behind them, she heard the wolves begin to follow. They were stalking her now, testing her, waiting for her to fall. Faster, she gasped. Come on, faster. Can't. You can. She tightened her grip until her fingers went numb. You don't get to die here. Not in my territory. The snowmobile materialized out of the darkness like salvation. Riley threw the man against it. He screamed again. She fumbled for the keys in her pocket. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped them. Once, twice, metal hitting ice with a sound like bells. A wolf stepped out of the tree line, then another, then a third. They were done waiting. Riley found the keys, jammed them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, beautiful and brutal. She gunned the throttle just as the first wolf lunged. Its jaws snapped shut inches from her arm. She could smell its breath. Rotten meat and copper. The snowmobile shot forward, spraying snow and ice in a rooster tail behind them. Riley held on with one hand, the other wrapped around the unconscious biker. She didn't slow down until the cabin lights appeared through the trees, warm yellow squares of safety cutting through the frozen dark. Getting him inside nearly killed her. He'd passed out completely now, dead weight across her shoulders. Riley dragged him up the porch steps one at a time, wood creaking under the strain, leaving a trail of blood on weathered planks. She kicked open the door, hauled him across the threshold, and collapsed beside him on the kitchen floor. For a long moment, she just lay there gasping, staring at the ceiling. The same ceiling she'd stared at every night for 2 years. The same ceiling her father had stared at for 30 years before that. The man moaned. Survival instinct took over. Riley pushed herself up and went to work. She'd learned field medicine from her father. How to stitch wounds, set bones, treat infections with whatever was on hand. He'd been a hunting guide for 3 decades, taught her everything before the logging accident took him. Now she was using those lessons to save a Hell's Angel. "This is insane," she muttered, cutting away what was left of his jeans. "This is absolutely insane." The wound was worse than she'd feared. The wolves had torn through muscle, maybe nicked an artery. Blood was still pumping out in steady pulses. She could see bone, white against red. If she didn't stop the bleeding in the next few minutes, he was dead. Riley had grabbed a belt from the closet and cinched it around his thigh, pulled until he screamed awake. "What?" His eyes flew open, wild with pain and confusion. "What are you, tourniquet?" She pulled tighter. "You're bleeding out. I have to stop it." Who are you?" "Nobody." She tied off the belt and reached for her father's medical kit. "I'm nobody. Now hold still." "It hurts." "Good. Means you're still alive." She worked fast, her hands moving on autopilot, cleaning the wound with vodka. He screamed again, a sound she'd hear in her nightmares for years, picking out debris with tweezers, pine needles, dirt, something that might have been wolf fur. Then came the hardest part, stitching the deepest gashes. But she had no medical thread, no surgical supplies, just her father's tackle box in the corner. Riley grabbed the fishing line, 20-pound test transparent strong, and threaded it through the largest needle she could find. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is going to hurt." She wasn't lying. The needle pierced torn flesh. The man's back arched. His screams shattered the silence of the cabin. But Riley didn't stop, couldn't stop. She'd seen her father do this once, stitching up a hunter who'd been mauled by a bear 20 miles from the nearest hospital. Tight stitches, close together, pull the edges flush. Her father's voice guided her hands, stitch after stitch. The man drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes he was quiet. Sometimes he muttered names she didn't recognize. "Hawk," he mumbled. "Tell Hawk." "Who's Hawk?" Riley asked, more to keep him conscious than anything else. "Brother, my brother. Tell him about the ledger." "What ledger?" But he was gone again, pulled under by pain and blood loss. Riley finished the final stitch. 27 in total. The fishing line held, not pretty but functional. She wrapped the leg in clean bandages torn from her father's old shirts, checked his pulse, thready but present. His breathing was shallow but steady. He might live. Maybe. If infection didn't set in, if she'd stopped the bleeding in time, if 100 other things went right. She sat back on her heels and finally looked at him. Really looked. He was older than she'd first thought, maybe mid-40s, weathered face carved by wind and sun and years of hard living, hands scarred from violence or labor or both. Brown hair shot through with gray, thick beard matted with blood. Tattoos covered every visible inch of skin. Skulls, flames, dates, names, a life written in ink and scar tissue. On his left forearm, bear, 1971, 2021. On his right, coordinates that might have been a grave. And that vest, Hell's Angels. The words stitched in red and white across the back. Below them, smaller patches. Yellowstone chapter, road captain, and a name tag over his heart. Ironside. "Ironside," Riley said aloud. "Your name is Ironside." No response. He was out cold. She pulled a blanket over him, the same wool blanket her father had used, still smelling faintly of pine smoke and Old Spice, and went to the window. Outside, the wolves had gathered at the edge of her property, their eyes reflecting the cabin lights. They weren't hunting anymore. They were watching, waiting. Riley had grabbed her rifle and settled into her father's old chair. The leather was cracked, the stuffing coming out in places. But it had been his throne for 30 years. Now it was hers. "You want him," she whispered to the darkness. "Come and take him." The wolves didn't move, and neither did she. Dawn came gray and cold. Riley hadn't slept. Every time she'd started to drift off, a wolf would howl, or Ironside would moan in his fevered sleep, and she'd snap awake with her finger on the trigger. Now as pale light crept through the windows, she finally allowed herself to breathe. Ironside's fever had spiked around 3 in the morning. She'd spent 2 hours forcing water down his throat, cooling his forehead with wet cloths torn from her last clean dress, praying to a god she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. But he was still breathing. Against all odds, he was still breathing. Riley made coffee, black, bitter, the way her father had liked it. She sat on the edge of the kitchen counter, legs dangling, staring at the stranger on her floor. What was she doing? She was 17 years old. She'd been alone for 2 years, ever since the logging accident that crushed her father under a falling pine. She'd found him 3 hours after it happened. Still alive. Barely. He'd looked at her with those kind eyes and said, "You're strong, baby girl. Stronger than you know." Then he died. Her mother had left when Riley was 6, just packed a bag one night and vanished down the mountain road. Never looked back, never called, never wrote. For years, Riley had checked the mailbox every day hoping for a letter, an explanation, anything. Nothing ever came. So it had been just her and Dad, and then just her. Riley had no family, no friends. The kids in Pine Hollow had stopped inviting her to things years ago. She was the weird girl who lived on the mountain, who hunted her own food, who could track a deer through snow but couldn't figure out how to talk to people her own age. No future beyond this cabin and these mountains. And now she had a dying Hell's Angel on her kitchen floor. "You picked the wrong place to crash," she told him. "I can barely keep myself alive out here." Ironside's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he just stared at her, confusion clouding his face like fog over the valley. Then memory flooded back and he tried to sit up. "Don't." Riley crossed the room in 2 steps, pushed him back down. Not hard, just firm. "You'll tear the stitches." "Where?" His voice was sandpaper on wood. "Where am I, Tut?" "My cabin, 20 miles north of Clearwater, middle of nowhere." "The wolves." "Outside, they've been watching all night." She handed him a glass of water. "Drink, you need fluids." He took the glass with shaking hands, drained it in 3 gulps. When he finished, he looked at her, really looked, and his expression shifted from confusion to something like wonder. "You saved me. You were dying. I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." He set the glass down, wincing as pain shot through his leg. "Most people would have run, should have run." "I'm not most people." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I'm starting to figure that out." He tried to sit up again, slower this time. Riley grabbed his arm, helping him prop his back against the cabinets. He was pale, sweating, but alive. The vest hung open now. She could see more tattoos underneath. A woman's name across his heart, Sarah. Forever. Below that, a date, August 3rd, 2019. The kind of date that meant something terrible. "My bike," he said suddenly. "Wrecked." "Where?" "I found it near the ridge where you went down. It's in pieces. Total loss." His face went pale. Not from pain, from fear. "Did you find anything in the saddlebags?" "I didn't check. I was more focused on the guy bleeding to death in the snow." "I need you to go back." His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength for a man who'd been at death's door hours ago. "There's a leather pouch in the left saddlebag. Brown leather. About this big." He gestured. "I need it." "What's in it?" "That's club business." Riley had pulled her arm free. "You're in my cabin. You're wearing my bandages. You're alive because of my fishing line. That makes it my business." Ironside stared at her for a long moment. She could see him calculating, weighing how much to tell her against how much he needed her help. The skin around his eyes was tight with pain, but his gaze was steady. Finally, he spoke. "It's a ledger. Names, dates, transactions. Proof that a rival club, the Vultures, murdered 2 federal agents and buried them in the desert outside Salt Lake." Riley's blood went cold. Federal agents. The vultures are running meth across 3 states, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada. The feds got too close, started asking the right questions, following the right trucks. So the vultures made them disappear. Ironside's jaw tightened. One of those agents was 26 years old. Michael Brennan had a wife, Sienna, a baby daughter, Lily, just turned 3. How did you get the ledger? I took it from the Vulture's president himself, Silas Crane. They call him Viper. A dark satisfaction flickered in his eyes. 3 months of planning, 6 weeks of surveillance, 1 night of execution. I walked into his clubhouse during their monthly meeting. 10 armed men. I walked out with the ledger and 3 bullet holes in my bike. That's insane. That's necessary. He leaned back against the cabinet. Every cop in Wyoming is looking for the man who can bring down the biggest drug operation in the region. But half those cops are on Vulture payroll. I can't trust anyone. Riley processed this slowly. The wolves, the crash, the dying man in the snow, it was all connected to something bigger, something dangerous, something that had just landed on her doorstep. Why, she asked quietly, why risk your life for a ledger? You're not a cop. You're not a Fed. Why do you care? Ironside was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old grief. Because I knew one of those agents, Michael Brennan. He was a kid from my hometown. Grew up 3 houses down from me in Laramie. I used to give him rides on my bike when he was 10 years old. Taught him how to throw a football, went to his high school graduation. He swallowed hard. His mother, Margaret, still sends me Christmas cards every year. Pictures of Lily, updates on Sienna, like I'm still part of their family. What happened to him? The vultures grabbed him and his partner, Nolan Cross, outside a truck stop in Utah, tortured them for 3 days in some warehouse, trying to find out what the feds knew, who else was investigating, where the wiretaps were. Ironside's hands clenched into fists. Then they put bullets in their heads and buried them in the desert. Shallow graves. The bodies weren't found for 2 months. Animals had gotten to them by then. Riley felt her stomach turn. When I heard what happened to Michael, what they did to him, I couldn't let it stand. Some things are bigger than club business. Some things are just about being human, about right and wrong. Riley stared at him. This wasn't the monster from the stories. This was a man driven by loyalty, by grief, by a code she recognized in her own bones. The same code that made her pull the trigger on those wolves. The same code that made her drag 200 pounds of dying man through the snow. I'll get your ledger, she said, but first you need to eat something. And you're not going anywhere until that leg heals. At least 2 weeks. Ironside shook his head. You don't understand. The vultures. They'll track me here. They'll find the blood trail, the tire marks from your snowmobile. They'll come. Then let them come. Riley stood reaching for her rifle. My name is Riley, Riley Ashford, and this is my territory. Nobody takes what's mine without a fight. The words hung in the air, bold, foolish, completely sincere. Ironside looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. This 17-year-old girl who'd lived alone on a mountain for 2 years, who'd fought off wolves, who'd saved his life with fishing line and vodka, who was now standing in front of him with a rifle ready to take on a drug cartel. Riley Ashford, he repeated, testing the name. I'm Callan Thorne, road name Ironside. I know, it's on your vest. Yeah, he almost smiled. Yeah, it is. Outside, one of the wolves howled, long and mournful, a sound that carried across the canyon like a warning, or maybe a promise. Riley moved to the window. The pack was still there. 6 shadows against white, waiting. They're patient, she said. I'll give them that. They're smart, Ironside replied. Wolves don't give up easy, not when they've tasted blood. They'll wait for days if they have to. So will I. She turned from the window, meeting his eyes. You saved someone's life once, didn't you? That's why you took that ledger. That's why you're willing to die for it. Ironside nodded slowly. Then I guess we're the same, Riley said, because I'm not letting anyone die on my mountain. Not you. Not some federal agent's family, not anyone. Kid. Stop calling me kid. I just saved your life with fishing line. I think I've earned my name. You did. Ironside's voice was soft, full of something she couldn't name. Respect maybe, or recognition. You absolutely did, and I won't forget it. The moment stretched between them, an understanding passing without words. 2 people who'd both lost everything, who'd both survived when they shouldn't have, who'd both chosen to fight when running would have been easier. Get some rest, Riley finally said. I'll go get your ledger at first light. It's already first light. Then I'll go now. You think you can stay alive for 30 minutes without me? I'll manage. Riley grabbed her coat from the hook by the door, checked her rifle, made sure she had extra ammunition. All the while, Ironside watched her with that strange expression, like he was memorizing her. Like he knew this girl in the too big coat with the too old eyes was going to change everything. Riley, he called as she reached the door. She turned. Thank you, he said simply, for not running. Riley shrugged. You would have done the same. Yeah, Ironside said quietly. Yeah, I would have. She stepped out into the cold. The wolves were gone now, melted back into the forest with the dawn. But their tracks remained, 6 sets of prints circling the cabin, round and round like a ritual, like they'd been drawing some kind of pattern, some kind of spell. Riley shouldered her rifle and started walking. The snow had covered most of the blood by the time she reached the crash site. She moved carefully, eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of the wolves. Or worse, the vultures could be watching right now, waiting to see who came looking for their target. But the forest was silent, too silent. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of her boots on frozen snow. Ironside's bike lay in a ravine about a quarter-mile from where she'd found him. The path down was treacherous loose rocks under ice hidden by fresh powder. She climbed down carefully, testing each foothold before committing her weight. The bike was totaled, frame bent at an impossible angle. Engine cracked open like a split melon. Fuel tank ruptured, leaving a rainbow sheen on the snow. Whatever had run him off the road had done it with tremendous force, or tremendous intent. The saddlebags were still attached, though one had been torn open by the impact. Riley found the leather pouch in the left bag, right where Ironside said it would be. It was heavier than she expected, thick with papers and photographs. She could feel the weight of lives inside it. Evidence, justice, revenge. She didn't open it. She'd seen enough movies to know that the less she knew, the safer she'd be. Some knowledge was a death sentence. She was slinging the pouch over her shoulder when she saw them. Tire tracks, fresh ones. 2 vehicles, maybe 3, had stopped on the road above the crash site within the last few hours. The tracks were deep, heavy vehicles, probably trucks. They'd idled for a while, engines running, people inside discussing, planning. Then they'd driven away, following the snowmobile tracks toward her cabin. Riley's heart hammered against her ribs. She ducked behind a boulder, scanning the road above her. Nothing moved. No engines. No voices. But the tracks were clear as day in the fresh snow. Someone else was looking for Ironside, and now they knew where to find him. She ran. Branches whipped at her face. Roots grabbed at her ankles. The leather pouch banged against her hip with every stride. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. The rifle was heavy across her back. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The cabin was 15 minutes away at a normal pace. She made it in 8. When she burst through the cabin door, gasping, Ironside was standing. A pistol in his hand that she didn't know he had. Chrome 9mm. Pointed at the door. He lowered it when he saw her. They found me, he said. It wasn't a question. Riley held up the leather pouch, gasping for breath. Tire tracks. At the crash site, fresh. 2, maybe 3 vehicles. They followed my snowmobile trail. They know you're here. Ironside's face went gray, not pale. Gray, like all the blood had drained from his body in an instant. How many? I don't know. I didn't see anyone. Just the tracks. He limped to the window. His leg was clearly hurting. Fresh blood had seeped through the bandages, but he moved anyway. Pulled back the curtain just enough to see outside. The road was empty, but that didn't mean anything. You need to leave, he said. Right now, take your snowmobile and go. There's a town about 15 miles south. Clearwater. Go to the sheriff. Tell him what's happening. I'm not leaving. Riley. I said I'm not leaving. She grabbed her rifle from the wall and began loading shells. You can barely stand. How are you going to fight anyone? This isn't your war. You made it my war when you bled all over my kitchen floor. Ironside turned to look at her. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe? Or recognition? Or something deeper, the acknowledgement that she wasn't going to back down. That she couldn't be protected or dismissed or sent away like a child. You've got guts, he said. I'll give you that. More guts than most of the men I've killed. I don't have guts. I have a home. Riley chambered around. The sound was final, decisive. Now tell me what we're dealing with. Who are these people? Before he could answer, an engine growled in the distance. Then another, and another. They both froze, but then Ironside smiled. Just a little. Just enough. That's not the vultures, he whispered. Riley had moved to the window. Through the trees, she could see headlights. Not the harsh white of truck beams, but something lower, more scattered, moving in formation. Motorcycles. A lot of them. Ironside, her voice was barely audible. Who did you call? I didn't call anyone, he said, but I've got brothers who don't need a phone call to know when I'm in trouble. The first bike emerged from the tree line, then a second, a third, a 10th. They kept coming, a river of chrome and leather flowing down the mountain road toward her cabin. Riley counted, 12, 15, 20, 23. The engine synchronized into a single roar, controlled, purposeful, military precision. Hell's Angels, Ironside said quietly. Yellowstone chapter. Riley watched them approach, her heart pounding with a new kind of fear. Not the animal fear of the wolves, not the desperate fear of Ironside dying, but something more complex, more uncertain. These were the monsters from the stories, the men her father had spoken about with a mixture of awe and caution. The outlaws who supposedly controlled half the illegal activity in Wyoming, and they were coming for Ironside, which meant they were coming to her. Are they here to help? She asked. They're here for me. Ironside moved toward the door. His limp was pronounced now, fresh blood staining his jeans, but determination carried him forward. Which means they're here for you too. The lead rider pulled into her driveway and killed his engine. The sudden silence was almost as loud as the roar had been. He was massive, 6'4" at least. Gray beard braided in the old style, arms like tree trunks covered in tattoos that told a lifetime of stories. His vest was covered in patches, President Yellowstone chapter, and dozens of smaller ones Riley couldn't read from this distance. He pulled off his helmet and looked at Ironside for a long moment. Then he looked at Riley. You the one who saved our brother. Riley's throat went dry. Yes, I found him in the snow. The wolves. The man held up a hand, silencing her. Not rudely, just commanding. This was a man used to being obeyed. He dismounted, walked to Ironside, and pulled him into an embrace that looked like it could crush bones. You stupid son of a bitch, the big man growled into Ironside's shoulder. We've been looking for you for 3 days. 3 days, Callan. Do you have any idea what that does to us, to me? Got a little sidetracked, Kodiak. Ironside winced as the embrace tightened. Easy. The girl stitched me up. But I'm not exactly factory condition. The man Kodiak released him and stepped back. His eyes scanned Ironside's body, taking in the fresh blood, the makeshift bandages, the fishing line visible through the gauze. Fishing line, he said flatly. It's what she had. And it held. I'm standing here, aren't I? Kodiak turned back to Riley. His eyes were steel gray, hard as mountain rock, but not unkind. What's your name, girl? Riley Ashford. Or Riley or Ashford. He said it slowly, like he was memorizing it, committing it to memory. You saved a Hell's Angel's life. You know what that means? She shook her head. It means you've got 100 brothers now. He extended his hand, massive, scarred, warm despite the cold. I'm Kodiak Morrison, President Yellowstone chapter, and from this moment on, whatever you need, wherever you go, we ride for you. Riley shook his hand. Her own hand disappeared inside his. Her mind was reeling, trying to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, she'd been alone, forgotten, invisible. A girl living on a mountain with no one to care whether she lived or died. Now she had an army. But somewhere in the mountains, the vultures were still hunting. And the war was just beginning. The rumble of 23 Hell's Angels engines shook Riley's cabin like thunder trapped in a bottle. She stood on her porch, rifle still in hand, watching these leather-clad giants dismount one by one. They moved with purpose, with discipline, not the chaos she'd expected from men the world called outlaws. Kodiak Morrison hadn't stopped looking at her since he'd arrived. His eyes, steel gray, hard as mountain rock, studied her like she was a puzzle he'd finally solved but still didn't quite believe. You're 17, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. Living out here alone. Yes, sir. And you dragged my road captain out of a wolf pack, stitched him up with fishing line, and stood guard all night with that rifle. Riley's jaw tightened. He was dying. I did what needed doing. Kodiak turned to Ironside, who was leaning heavily against the doorframe, fresh blood seeping through his jeans. She always this stubborn? Ironside laughed, then winced. Worse, she told me to shut up 3 times before I even knew her name. A ripple of amusement passed through the gathered bikers. Men with faces like weathered stone cracked smiles. Someone in the back chuckled. Riley felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't look away from the president. Was I supposed to let you bleed to death politely? She asked. The amusement died instantly. Kodiak's expression shifted. Something darker, more serious. Those men who ran Ironside off the road, he said. The vultures. They're coming. You know that, right? I saw their tire tracks at the crash site this morning. Fresh tracks, 2, maybe 3 vehicles. They followed my snowmobile trail. They know he's here. Smart girl. Kodiak turned to a massive biker with a braided beard and arms covered in Norse tattoos, ravens and wolves intertwined with ancient runes. Hawk, perimeter, now! The man Hawk nodded once and barked orders, his voice carried like a drill sergeant's. Within seconds, half the angels had melted into the tree line. Engines silent, moving like ghosts, positioning themselves around Riley's property like sentinels guarding sacred ground. The irony wasn't lost on her. Last night she'd fought wolves. Now wolves were protecting her. How many vultures we looking at? Kodiak asked Ironside. So hard to say. They sent maybe 6 after me in Utah. Caught me outside Provo. Shot up my bike on I-15. I lost them in the mountains, or so I thought. Ironside shook his head. But if Silas knows, I've got the ledger, and he has to know by now, he'll bring everyone. 30, 40 men, maybe more. Then we call in reinforcements. Reno chapter's only 4 hours out. Boise maybe 6. We don't have 6 hours. Riley stepped forward, drawing both men's attention. Those tire tracks were fresh, a few hours old at most. They're scouting, which means the main force isn't far behind. Kodiak studied her again with that penetrating gaze. You read tracks. My father was a hunting guide for 30 years. He taught me everything. How to read sign, how to predict animal movement, how to know when something's hunting you. She paused. Those tracks, they stopped at the crash site for at least 10 minutes. Engines running, that means they were discussing, planning, and then they followed my trail here. And you came back anyway. He needed the ledger. Riley looked at Ironside. And I don't leave people to die. Something shifted in Kodiak's expression. Not pity, she would have hated pity, but recognition. Understanding. Where's your father now? The question hit her like a fist to the chest, but she kept her voice steady. Dead, 2 years ago, logging accident. A pine came down wrong during a storm, crushed him. He died before anyone could get him out. I found him 3 hours later. Your mother. Gone since I was 6. She packed a suitcase one night, walked down the mountain road, never looked back, never called, never wrote. Riley's voice was flat, factual. She'd told this story in her head 1,000 times until the words had no emotion left. I don't even know if she's alive. So you've been out here alone, 2 years, 17 years old. I survive. Kodiak nodded slowly. Then he did something that surprised her. He extended his hand again, not a handshake this time, but an open palm, waiting. The ledger. Ironside says you retrieved it. Riley hesitated. She'd hidden the leather pouch under her mattress, unsure whether she should trust anyone with something that had nearly gotten a man killed. But Ironside caught her eye and nodded. She went inside and returned with the pouch, placed it in Kodiak's hand. He opened it, rifled through the pages, and his face went hard as granite. Names, he muttered. Dates, dollar amounts, photographs. He pulled out a picture. 2 men in FBI windbreakers tied to chairs, faces beaten beyond recognition. Jesus Christ. They documented their own crimes. Well, Silas Crane is paranoid, Ironside explained. Keeps records on everyone, including his own men. Insurance in case anyone thinks about flipping. That's how I knew where to find it. His own paranoia became his weakness. Kodiak flipped through more pages. Michael Brennan and Nolan Cross, the 2 agents. His voice dropped. It's all here. The kidnapping, the torture, even the coordinates of where they buried the bodies. Michael was 26, Ironside said, his hands clenched into fists. Nolan was 28. Both had families. Both were tortured for 3 days before Silas finally put bullets in their heads. His voice broke slightly. Michael grew up 3 houses down from me in Laramie. I used to give him rides on my bike when he was a kid. Taught him how to throw a football. His mother, Margaret, still sends me Christmas cards every year. Pictures of his daughter, Lily. She just turned 3. She'll grow up without a father because of Silas Crane. Riley felt her stomach turn. She'd known the ledger was important, but this was evidence of pure evil. "Why haven't you given this to the police?" she asked. Kodiak and Ironside exchanged a look. A conversation happened in that glance. Years of brotherhood compressed into a single moment of understanding. "The Vultures have cops on their payroll," Kodiak explained. "State police, county sheriffs, maybe even a few federal agents. Silas has been running meth across 3 states for 15 years. You don't do that without protection. We hand this over to the wrong person, it disappears. And so do we. So what's the plan? We've got a contact in the FBI, Garrett Roberts, clean as they come. One of the only ones we trust. We get this ledger to him, the Vultures are done, their whole operation comes down. And Silas Crane," Kodiak's smile held no warmth. "Silas goes to prison, or he dies trying to stop us. Either way, he's finished." A whistle pierced the air, sharp, coded, 2 short, 1 long. Hawk emerged from the tree line, moving fast for a man his size. "We've got company," black truck circling the north ridge. 2 men inside, Vulture colors. Riley's heart rate spiked. "Scouts, looks like they're staying out of rifle range. About 800 yards. Just watching." "They're counting us," Ironside said grimly, reporting back to Silas. "Telling him how many we have, what our positions are." Kodiak pulled out a burner phone. "I'm calling Reno. We need every man they can spare." "It won't be enough." Riley grabbed his arm before she could stop herself. "The president of the Hells Angels Yellowstone chapter." She was grabbing his arm, telling him he was wrong, but Kodiak didn't pull away. He just looked at her, waiting. "Listen to me," she said. "I know this territory better than anyone alive. Every trail, every ridge, every place a man can hide or get trapped. If you try to fight them head-on, you'll lose. They'll have more men, more guns, and they're willing to die for Silas because he pays well and kills anyone who betrays him." Kodiak's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" Riley's mind raced through the terrains she'd memorized since childhood, the places her father had shown her, the secrets only locals knew. The land itself could be a weapon if used correctly. "There's a canyon about 2 miles east, Ember Canyon. My father used to take hunters there. Narrow entrance, maybe 12 feet wide. High walls rising 50 feet on either side. Sheer rock, no way to climb out. It runs for about a quarter mile, then dead ends in a solid wall. One way and one way out," Ironside said, his eyes lighting up with understanding. "Exactly. My father used to hunt mountain lions that way. You can't chase a lion in open terrain, they're too fast. But if you lead them into a narrow space, let the walls do half the work, funnel them where they can't escape." She met Kodiak's eyes. "It's our best chance." The president turned to Hawk. "What do you think?" Hawk scratched his beard, considering. "Kid's got a point. We're outnumbered. Can't win a straight fight. But if we control the ground, force them into a kill zone where they can't maneuver." He nodded slowly. "We might have a chance. It's a good tactical plan." Kodiak studied Riley for a long moment. She could see him reassessing her, not as a child to be protected, but as an asset, a soldier. "All right," he said finally. "Show us this canyon." Riley grabbed her rifle. "Follow me." For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't running from something. She was running toward it. The canyon was exactly as Riley remembered, a narrow slash through the mountains. The entrance was deceptive. It looked wider from a distance, but up close the walls squeezed in tight, maybe 12 feet across, just wide enough for 2 motorcycles side by side, or a truck if the driver was skilled. The walls rose straight up, 50 feet of sheer granite on either side. No handholds, no ledges, no way to climb out once you were inside. Hawk surveyed the terrain with a tactical eye honed by 3 tours in Iraq. "Good sight lines from the ridges. We put shooters up there." He pointed to the north ridge. "And there. Anyone coming through that entrance is walking into a crossfire." "What about the other end?" Ironside asked, limping beside Riley. His leg was clearly hurting now, but he pushed through it. "Dead end, wall of rock. My father said it was a landslide about 50 years ago. Sealed off what used to be a pass through the mountains." She pointed. "They'll be trapped. No way out except back through us." Kodiak was already thinking like a general. "We need bait. Someone to lead them here. The Vultures aren't going to charge blindly into a canyon. They're criminals, not idiots. They'll scout it first. Check for traps." "What about the ledger?" Hawk suggested. "We could let them see it. Make them think Ironside's trying to escape through the canyon." "Too risky," Ironside said. If they get their hands on it, they won't. Riley's voice cut through the discussion. Because I'll be the one leading them. Everyone turned to look at her. Absolutely not, Ironside said immediately. Listen to me. No, you listen. Ironside grabbed her shoulder, spinning her to face him. These men are killers, Riley. Professional killers. They've murdered federal agents, run drugs across 3 states. They won't hesitate to put a bullet in a 17-year-old girl who gets in their way. I know what they are. Then you know this is suicide. It's not suicide if it works. She pulled free of his grip. I know these mountains. I know every trail, every shortcut, every hiding spot. I can stay ahead of them, draw them into the canyon, and disappear before they even know what hit them. And if something goes wrong, then you make sure it counts. She met his eyes unflinching. You get that ledger to your FBI contact? You bring down the vultures. You make Michael Brennan's death mean something. You make sure his daughter grows up knowing her father died for justice, not for nothing. Ironside stared at her, his jaw working. She could see the war in his eyes. The protective instinct, something she suspected was new for him, caring about someone outside his brotherhood, fighting against the cold logic of survival. She's right. Kodiak's voice cut through the tension. She knows the terrain. She's fast. She's small, harder target. And she's the last person they'll expect. Kodiak, I'm not saying I like it. The president looked at Riley. But we don't have a lot of options here. The vultures are coming. Whether we're ready or not, this gives us control. This gives us a chance. He turned back to Ironside. You trained her. I've been unconscious most of the time I've known her. Then we train her now. Kodiak gestured to Hawk. You've got 2 hours to teach her everything she needs to know about staying alive in a firefight. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Hawk positioned 6 angels on the north ridge and 6 on the south. Overlapping fields of fire, covering every inch of the canyon entrance. They moved rocks into place for cover, checked sight lines, tested angles. Meanwhile, Riley got a crash course in survival. When the shooting starts, you drop flat, Hawk told her, his voice drill sergeant sharp. Not crouch, flat. Belly to the ground, make yourself the smallest target possible. He had her practice it over and over until she could drop and roll in a single fluid motion. Bullets travel straight, but they ricochet, especially in a canyon with rock walls. He pointed to the granite. You don't want to be standing when lead starts bouncing around like a pinball. Flat, every time. Next came evasion. You're not trying to outrun them, Hawk explained. You're trying to stay ahead. Big difference. Outrunning means speed. Staying ahead means using the terrain. Use trees for cover. Stay in draws and gullies where they can't get a clean shot. Change direction every 30 seconds so they can't predict your path. Ironside joined them, limping over with a topographical map. These are the trails you'll use. He traced routes with his finger. Stay on these, they're narrow. Bikes can follow, but trucks can't. That cuts their numbers. What if they send men on foot? Then you move faster. Ironside looked at her seriously. This is the most dangerous part. Once you lead them into the canyon, you need to get out. There's going to be a gap, maybe 30 seconds between when you enter and when they enter. That's your window. Where do I go? He pointed to a spot on the map. There's a crevice on the east wall, about 50 yards in. It's narrow, maybe 18 inches wide. You can slip through, they can't. It leads to a cave system that connects to the backside of the mountain. I know that crevice, Rayleigh said. My father and I used to cache supplies there. Perfect. You slip through, hide, and wait for the shooting to stop. Ironside's voice was firm. Do not come out until one of us comes to get you. Understood. Understood. But there was one more thing. Kodiak approached with a small radio. This is a one-way transmitter. Press this button, it sends a signal to our radios. 1 press means you're in position. 2 presses means you're in trouble. 3 presses means abort, something's gone wrong and we need to extract you. He clipped it to her belt. Don't hesitate to use it. Pride gets people killed. Caution keeps them alive. Riley had nodded, her mouth dry. This was real. This was happening. In less than an hour, she'd be leading a drug cartel into an ambush. Men who'd tortured federal agents. Men who wouldn't think twice about killing a teenage girl. Her hands started to shake. Ironside saw it. He pulled her aside, away from the others. You can still say no, he said quietly. Nobody here will think less of you. You've already done more than anyone could ask. You saved my life. That's enough. It's not about enough. Riley looked at the canyon, at the angels positioning themselves, at the trap they were setting. Michael Brennan's daughter is 3 years old. In 15 years, she'll be my age. I want her to grow up in a world where the men who killed her father are gone, where justice matters. Justice doesn't always win. Then we make it win. She met his eyes. You taught me that some things are bigger than one person, bigger than safety. This is one of those things. Ironside stared at her for a long moment. Then something changed in his face. The fear was still there, but it was wrapped in something else now, something like pride. When this is over, he said quietly, I'm going to tell you about a man named Bear. He saved my life 27 years ago, gave me a choice when I had nothing left. His voice was rough with emotion. You remind me of him. That same fire, that same refusal to quit. I'm scared, Riley admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's not about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. He pulled something from his pocket. A small patch, simple design, white wolf outline on black background. When this is over, he said, pressing it into her hand, you're one of us. Whether you want to be or not, you've earned it. Riley has clutched the patch. It was warm from his body heat. Real, solid, a family. She'd been alone for so long, and now a whistle, sharp, urgent. Hawk was signaling from the ridge. The scouts were moving, getting closer. It was time. Riley found a position overlooking the main road, close enough to be seen, far enough to run. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Every nerve ending was on fire, every instinct screaming at her to hide, but she stayed visible. She had to be seen. The black truck appeared first, moving slowly down the dirt road. Windows tinted, deliberate. Then a van, then two more trucks, then motorcycles. 5, 10, 15. The vultures were massing for war. She counted heads through binoculars Hawk had given her. 30 men, maybe more, all armed, all wearing black leather vests with that skeletal bird stitched across the back. The vulture patch looked like death itself. At the center of the group stood a man who could only be Silas Crane. Tall, lean, moving with a precision that was too smooth, too controlled, like a snake deciding when to strike. He wore a bandana over the lower half of his face, but his eyes were visible, cold, calculating, reptilian. He was pointing toward her cabin, giving orders. Then one of the scouts, a younger man with a shaved head, pointed directly at Riley's position. He'd seen her. Time slowed down. Silas turned. Even from 300 yards away, she could feel his eyes lock onto her. He smiled. Then he raised his hand and pointed. The vultures started moving. Riley ran. She took the back trails. Deer paths her father had shown her years ago. Too narrow for trucks. Too steep for anyone who didn't know the terrain. Branches whipped at her face. Roots grabbed at her ankles. She ignored it all, pushing harder, faster. Behind her, she heard the convoy split. The trucks stayed on the main road trying to cut her off. But the motorcycles, they found the trail. Engines roared behind her, getting closer. Riley's lungs burned. Her legs screamed for rest. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The canyon was still half a mile away. If they caught her before she reached it, the whole plan failed. She burst through a clearing and nearly ran straight into a vulture scout. The man's eyes went wide. His hand dropped to his gun. Riley didn't think. She swung her rifle like a club. The stock connected with his jaw with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Bone cracked. The man went down hard. She was past him before he hit the ground. More shouts behind her now. More engines. They'd seen her. Seen what she'd done. Good. Now they were angry. Angry men made mistakes. She pushed harder. The canyon entrance appeared through the trees. That narrow gap between the rock walls. Exactly where she remembered it. Almost there. A bullet whined past her ear. The crack came a second later. Riley dove, rolled, came up running, her father's training taking over. Never run in a straight line. Never give them a stationary target. Another shot, another miss. The vultures were firing wild, shooting at a moving target through trees. Nearly impossible. But nearly wasn't never. She reached the canyon entrance and plunged through. The walls rose around her like the jaws of some great beast. Her footsteps echoed off the stone. Behind her, she could hear the motorcycles slowing, hesitating at the narrow gap. Then Silas's voice, cold and commanding, echoing off the rocks. After her, all of you, now. The engines roared again. Riley ran deeper into the canyon, counting steps. Her father had taught her to estimate distance by counting. 50 yards. The crevice should be coming up on her right. There. A narrow split in the rock wall, barely visible unless you knew where to look. She pressed the radio button once. I'm in position. Then she squeezed through the crevice. It was tight, tighter than she remembered. Her rifle caught on the rock. She had to turn sideways, push through. The stone scraped her arms, tore her jacket, but she made it through. On the other side was darkness, the cave system her father had shown her. She pressed back against the wall, hidden in shadow, and waited. The first vulture came through the canyon entrance on his motorcycle. Then another, another. They filled the narrow space like water pouring through a crack. 20 men, 30, and all of them armed, and all of them focused on the far end of the canyon where they thought she'd gone. Silas was the last one through. He killed his engine and dismounted, pulling a pistol from his belt. Chrome, Desert Eagle, meant for intimidation as much as killing. Well, well, his voice echoed off the canyon walls. The little girl who saved the Hell's Angel. You've caused us a lot of trouble, sweetheart. Silence. Riley held her breath. Come out, Silas called. There's nowhere to run. The canyon dead ends. We've got 30 men. You've got what, a rifle and a prayer. More silence. Tell you what, Silas continued, his voice taking on a false kindness. You give us the ledger and maybe we let you live. Maybe we let you walk away. You're just a kid. You didn't know what you were getting into. Riley pressed harder against the cave wall, her heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at her to run deeper into the cave, to hide, to escape. But she'd done her part. Now it was up to the angels. Silas took another step into the canyon, then another. His men followed, spreading out, searching. The ledger, Silas said. His voice was harder now, anger bleeding through. Where is it? Then Hawk's voice echoed from the ridge above, calm, steady, final. Right here, asshole. The canyon exploded. Gunfire rained down from both ridges. A thunderstorm of lead and fury. Muzzle flashes lit up the canyon like lightning. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, absolute. Vultures screamed, fell, scrambled for cover that didn't exist. The canyon walls turned their own ambush against them. Bullets ricocheting off stone, finding flesh no matter where they hid. Riley covered her ears. Even hidden in the cave, the sound was unbearable. Like standing inside a thundercloud, she could smell gunpowder, cordite, blood. She heard Silas screaming orders, heard the roar of engines as some vultures tried to flee back through the entrance, heard the crack, crack, crack of Hawk's rifle picking them off one by one. Methodical, professional. Then as suddenly as it had started, it was over. Silence fell over the canyon like a shroud. Riley raised her head slowly. Through the crevice, she could see the canyon. Bodies lay everywhere. Vultures slumped over their motorcycles, crumpled against the canyon walls, sprawled in the dirt. But not all of them. A handful had survived. Maybe 5, including Silas. He was crouched behind a rock, bleeding from a wound in his shoulder, pistol still in hand, and he was looking around, searching for her. I know you're here, he called out. His voice was different now, not smooth, ragged, desperate. I saw you come in. Didn't see you go out. You're hiding somewhere. Riley pressed back against the cave wall, barely breathing. Come out, Silas screamed. Come out, you little bitch. Footsteps. He was moving along the wall, getting closer to the crevice. Riley's hand went to the radio. She could press it twice. Signal distress. Bring the angels down. But movement would make noise, and noise would reveal her position. She stayed frozen. Silas was 10 feet away now, 5 feet. His shadow fell across the crevice opening. I'm going to find you, he whispered. And when I do, a gunshot cracked through the canyon. Silas's body jerked. His eyes went wide. He looked down at the bloom of red spreading across his chest, then back up, confused, betrayed. He collapsed. Behind him, Ironside stood at the canyon entrance, pistol still smoking, his face pale with pain and exhaustion, blood soaking through his jeans. He'd torn his stitches again, but he was standing. You talk too much, Ironside said to the dead man. Then his legs gave out and he crumpled to the ground. Riley burst from the crevice. Ironside, Ironside. She caught him before he hit the rocks. His weight nearly took her down, but she held on, lowered him carefully. Ironside, stay with me. His eyes fluttered. Blood was seeping through his bandages. The fishing line stitches had torn, fresh wounds mixing with old. Told you, he mumbled. Told you to come back. I did come back, you idiot. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm right here. Good. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Good. The angels were descending from the ridges now, boots on stone, checking bodies, securing weapons. Hawk reaching them first, dropping to his knees beside Ironside. Medic, Kodiak bellowed from somewhere. Someone get me a damn medic. I've got this. Riley pushed Hawk aside gently but firmly. I've done it before. Her hands were steady now, rock steady. She'd kept him alive through one impossible night. She could do it again. She worked fast, cutting away the old bandages, applying pressure to the worst bleeds. The fishing line had held surprisingly well, only 3 stitches had torn completely. She could work with that. Tech appeared with a proper first aid kit. Real medical supplies, sterile thread, antiseptic, gauze. Riley stitched the reopened wound, proper stitches this time. Ironside groaned but didn't pass out. Tough bastard. You're going to be okay, she told him. You hear me? You're going to be fine. I believe you. His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. I believe you, wolf girl. It was the second time anyone had called her that. She didn't let go of his hand until the bleeding stopped. They burned the vultures' bikes in the canyon. The smoke rose black and thick against the blue Wyoming sky. The bodies they left for the county to find. Evidence. Proof. Let the law handle the cleanup, Kodiak said. We've got what we came for. The ledger was already on its way to FBI agent Garrett Roberts. A trusted angel courier was riding it straight to Boise. By tomorrow morning, federal raids would be hitting vulture operations in 3 states. But first there was something else. Kodiak gathered everyone at the canyon entrance. 23 angels. And Riley. There's something you need to know, he said quietly. His voice was different, softer, more personal. He pulled out an old photograph from his vest pocket, yellowed with age, creased from years of being carried close to his heart. This photo was taken 33 years ago. He held it up. The image showed a young woman, maybe 19, holding a newborn baby. She was standing in front of a log cabin. Behind her, a distinctive twisted pine tree with 2 trunks growing from one root. The tree had a white blaze like lightning down its trunk. Riley's breath caught. That tree, that's outside my cabin. This is my daughter, Kodiak said. His voice was rough with old emotion. Evelyn, she was born in your cabin during the worst blizzard Wyoming had seen in 50 years. February 12, 1990, I was 25 years old, riding through a whiteout. My wife was in labor. We couldn't reach the hospital. Roads were completely blocked. He turned the photo over. On the back, faded blue ink, Evelyn Morrison, born February 12, 1993, 3:47 a.m., delivered by Margaret Ashford. Margaret Ashford, Riley whispered. That was my grandmother. Your grandmother saved my daughter's life that night. Kodiak's eyes were wet. My wife was in labor for 16 hours. Complications, breech birth, hemorrhaging, no hospital equipment, no ambulances, just your grandmother's hands in 60 years of experience. She was a midwife. Best in 3 counties, delivered half the babies in Pine Hollow over 40 years. He looked at the photo. When Evelyn finally came out, she wasn't breathing. Your grandmother gave her mouth-to-mouth for 5 minutes. 5 minutes of breathing life into my daughter. And then, Evelyn cried. Ironside was listening now too, his face soft. I tried to pay your grandmother, Kodiak continued. Offered her everything I had. She refused. Said she didn't save babies for money. She saved them because it was right. That sounds like her, Riley said quietly. She'd been so young when her grandmother died, but she remembered kindness, gentle hands, a laugh like wind chimes. I've spent 33 years trying to repay that debt, Kodiak said, looking for your grandmother, but she passed before I could track her down. She died when I was 2, cancer. When Ironside radioed that he'd crashed near Clearwater, near an Ashford cabin, Kodiak shook his head, his voice breaking. I knew. 33 years later, and Ashford saving a Morrison again. He reached out and took Riley's hand. That's not coincidence, girl. That's destiny. That's blood debt being honored across generations. You don't owe me anything. Yes, we do. Kodiak's grip tightened. Your grandmother saved my daughter when I had nothing to offer her but gratitude. Now I have everything to offer you. Protection, family, a place in this world. He stood helping Riley to her feet. That's why every angel in Wyoming dropped everything and came. That's why we'll ride through hellfire for you, not just because you saved Ironside, but because an Ashford saved a Morrison. And Hell's Angels always pay their debts. Ironside managed to sit up wincing. You're not just Wolf Girl. Your legacy. Riley looked at the photo again, at the grandmother she barely remembered, at the baby who was now a 33-year-old woman somewhere in the world, at the invisible thread that had connected her family to these men for 3 decades. Where is she now? Riley asked. Evelyn, Kodiak smiled through his tears. She's a doctor. Emergency medicine. Works at St. Alphonsus in Boise. Saves lives every day, just like the woman who saved hers. He tucked the photo back in his vest over his heart. I'll introduce you someday. She'll want to meet the girl who continued her grandmother's legacy, who saved her uncle's life. Uncle, Ironside and I have ridden together for 40 years. That makes him family, which makes you family. Kodiak's voice was iron. And we protect family. For the first time in 2 years, Riley understood what it meant to belong to something bigger than herself. She wasn't alone anymore. She'd never be alone again. The rumble of engines faded into memory as the last Hell's Angel disappeared over the horizon. Riley stood on her rebuilt porch, coffee growing cold in her hands, watching the empty road. 3 weeks had passed since the warehouse, since Cole's body hit the concrete, since Sienna and Lily were delivered safely to the FBI. 3 weeks since Kodiak had pressed that golden key into her palm. Guard them all, Wolf Girl. Now the cabin stood empty, except for her. The angels had returned to their chapters. Ironside had ridden back to Yellowstone with promises to return. Even the winter guests who'd started arriving, drawn by word-of-mouth stories of a sanctuary in the mountains, had moved on following the spring thaw down to warmer valleys. Riley was alone again, but this time the loneliness felt different. You gonna drink that coffee or just hold it? She spun around. Brennan Cross stood in the doorway, 27 years old, Afghanistan veteran, Nolan's younger brother. He'd arrived 2 weeks ago driving a smoking truck up the mountain with nothing but a duffel bag and 1,000-yard stare. Now he was grinning, actually grinning. Thought you were still asleep, Relay said. Slept better last night than I have in 2 years. Whatever magic this place has, it's working. He stepped onto the porch, his own coffee steaming in the morning air. Got a call this morning. VA approved my disability claim. Full benefits. Therapy covered. All of it. Brennan, that's amazing. Yeah, his voice caught. Yeah, it is. And I've got you to thank for it. You and Kodiak. He made some calls. Put me in touch with the right people. Angels take care of their own, he said. You're not an angel. No, but you are. Which makes me family by extension. Brennan looked out at the mountains. I talked to my mom last night, first time in 8 months, told her I was getting help, told her about this place, about you. He turned to Riley. She wants to meet you, the girl who brought justice for Nolan. Riley's chest tightened. I didn't do much. Just led some killers into a canyon. You did everything. Brennan's voice was fierce. You gave my family closure. You made sure the men who murdered my brother will never hurt anyone else. That's not nothing, Riley. That's everything. A car appeared on the road below, then another, and another. Riley's hand instinctively moved to the rifle by the door. Relax, Brennan said. I recognize that lead car. That's Doc Patterson from town. And unless I'm mistaken, that's Sheriff Daniels behind him. The sheriff, what does he want? Guess we're about to find out. The 3 vehicles pulled into the driveway. Doc Patterson emerged first, 70 years old, kindly face carrying his black medical bag like he had for 50 years. Sheriff Daniels followed hat in hand, and from the third car, a woman Riley didn't recognize. 50s, professional clothing, briefcase. Miss Ashford, Doc Patterson called out. Hope we're not intruding. Doc, Sheriff. Riley came down the steps. What's this about? This, the woman said, extending her hand, is about recognizing what you've done. I'm Governor Sarah Mitchell. Riley's coffee cup slipped. Brennan caught it before it shattered. The governor? The same. Mitchell's smile was warm, genuine. I've been hearing stories about you for 3 weeks now, Miss Ashford. From the FBI, from the Hells Angels, from families of victims. And I wanted to meet you myself before I did this. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. Official, sealed with the state emblem. House Bill 447, the Ashford Good Samaritan Act. It protects anyone who provides emergency medical care in rural areas from civil or criminal liability. Inspired by a 17-year-old girl who saved a man's life with fishing line when the nearest hospital was 30 miles away. Riley's throat closed. I don't understand. You stitched up a dying man with fishing line and vodka. No medical license, no hospital, no backup. In most cases, that could be prosecuted as practicing medicine without a license. even if you saved his life. Mitchell's voice was firm. This law makes sure that never happens, to you or anyone else. Sheriff Daniels stepped forward. I've been sheriff of this county for 23 years, seen a lot of things, but I've never seen someone your age do what you did. Fight off wolves, save a man's life, take on a drug cartel. He cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. When those angels rolled into town, I assumed the worst. Thought you'd gotten mixed up in something criminal. I was wrong. We were all wrong, Doc Patterson added. This town forgot about you after your father died. Left you up here alone, that's on us. But you survived anyway, thrived even. And when the time came, you chose courage over safety. Governor Mitchell handed Riley the document. 5 other states have already adopted similar laws. Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Colorado. 12 more are drafting legislation. By year's end, we estimate this act will protect thousands of rural first responders across the West. All because of you, Brennan said quietly. Riley stared at the document, at her name in official typeface, at the seal of Wyoming pressed into wax. I just did what my father taught me. Then your father, Mitchell said, raised someone extraordinary. The signing ceremony is tomorrow in Cheyenne. I'd be honored if you'd attend. The families of Michael Brennan and Nolan Cross will be there. They want to thank you personally. I'll be there, Riley heard herself say. The signing ceremony was held on the Capitol steps. Camera crews everywhere, reporters shouting questions, politicians in expensive suits, smiling for photographs. Riley felt out of place in borrowed clothes. Mama Bear had taken her shopping in town, insisting she needed something that wasn't covered in wolf blood, standing between Governor Mitchell and an empty chair. The empty chair held a photograph. Michael Brennan in his FBI uniform, 26 years old, smiling, alive. Next to it, another photograph. Nolan Cross, 28, same smile, same pride. Ladies and gentlemen, Mitchell's voice carried across the crowd. Today, we honor 2 fallen heroes, federal agents Michael Brennan and Nolan Cross, who gave their lives investigating criminal organizations that threatened innocent citizens. She gestured to Riley, and we honor the courage of one 17-year-old girl who ensured their deaths were not in vain. The crowd applauded. Riley's face burned. House Bill 447 will save lives. But more than that, it represents a promise that when good people do brave things, they will be protected, not prosecuted. Mitchell signed the document with a flourish. Cameras flashed. Then she handed the pen to Riley. This is your law. You should sign it too. Riley's hands shook as she took the pen. She signed her name next to the governor's. Small, neat, the handwriting her father had taught her. Riley Margaret Ashford Margaret, her grandmother's name. The midwife who delivered half of Pine Hollow's babies over 40 years. Who'd saved Kodiak's daughter during a blizzard 33 years ago. Legacy flowing through generations. The crowd erupted in applause. Then someone pushed through the press of bodies. An elderly woman, 70s, gray hair, kind eyes filled with tears. Riley Ashford, she asked. Yes, ma'am. I'm Margaret Brennan, Michael's mother. The woman's voice broke. May I hug you? Riley nodded, unable to speak. Margaret pulled her close. She smelled like lavender and old books, like grandmothers should smell. Thank you, Margaret whispered into Riley's hair. Thank you for giving my son's death meaning, for making sure those monsters can never hurt another family. I'm so sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry, be proud. Margaret pulled back, holding Riley's face in weathered hands. Michael wanted to make the world safer. Because of you, he did. 34 Vulture members arrested. Their drug operation dismantled. Their leadership dead or imprisoned. That's Michael's legacy. That's Nolan's legacy. And it's yours. She pressed something into Riley's hand. A photograph. Young Michael in his FBI Academy uniform. On the back, shaky handwriting, thank you for giving my son's death meaning. You are the daughter I wish he'd lived to meet. Margaret Brennan. Riley's vision blurred with tears. Then another woman appeared. Younger. Dark hair, bruises still fading from her face. A little girl clutching her hand. Sienna Brennan. And Lily. Wolf girl, Lily shouted, breaking free and running to Riley. Riley caught her, lifting the 4-year-old into her arms. Hey, sweetheart. How are you? Good. We got a new house and Mommy says I can get a puppy. And I drew you another picture. She thrust a crayon drawing into Riley's hands. A wolf with angel wings. Better than the last one. More detailed. It's beautiful. It's you, Lily said seriously. You're the wolf girl who saved us from the bad man. Sienna approached slowly. She talks about you every day. Her hero, the brave girl who wasn't scared. I was scared, Riley admitted. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. That's what makes you brave. Sienna's eyes were wet. Agent Roberts told me what you did, how you walked into that warehouse alone, how you refused to kneel even with a gun to your head, how you protected us. I just did what needed doing. You did more than that. You gave my daughter a future. You gave her a world where the men who killed her father can't hurt anyone else. Sienna took Riley's free hand. I will make sure Lily knows your name, knows your story, knows that when evil came, a girl named Riley Ashford stood up and said no. The cameras captured it all. The elderly grandmother, the widow, the little girl with her crayon drawing, the 17-year-old girl at the center looking uncomfortable and honored and overwhelmed all at once. That photograph would run in newspapers across 6 states. But Riley wasn't thinking about newspapers. She was thinking about the empty chair, the photograph of Michael Brennan, the young man who'd grown up 3 houses down from Ironside, who'd become an FBI agent because he wanted to protect people, who died doing exactly that. He'd be proud of you, Margaret said, following Riley's gaze. Michael always said the system was broken, that good people needed protecting from bureaucracy as much as from criminals. This law is exactly what he would have wanted. Governor Mitchell stepped forward. Miss Ashford, I have one more thing to show you. She gestured to an aide who unfurled a large map of the western United States. Pins marked various locations. Since word spread about Wolf's Rest, I've been contacted by organizations across the region, veterans groups, domestic violence shelters, homeless outreach programs. They all want to know the same thing. Can we replicate what you've built? Mitchell pointed to the pins. Montana, 2 locations being planned. Idaho, 3 locations. Nevada, 1. Utah, 2. Colorado, 4. New Mexico, 1. That's, Riley's voice trailed off, that's 13 locations. 13 sanctuaries inspired by yours. 13 places where lost souls can find rest, where broken people can heal, where no one has to face their demons alone. Mitchell smiled. You started something, Riley, something bigger than one cabin on a mountain. I don't know how to run 13 locations. I can barely run one. You won't be alone. The Hells Angels have offered support, resources, protection, and several nonprofit organizations have committed funding. Mitchell's voice softened. You don't have to do this. No one would blame you if you wanted to just be a kid, go to college, live a normal life. Riley looked at the map, at all those pins, at all those places that could become havens. She thought about Brennan sleeping peacefully for the first time in 2 years, about Ainsley Webb finding safety after fleeing her abusive husband, about the 3 homeless veterans who'd found purpose helping rebuild her cabin, about all the lost souls still out there, still searching, still hurting. I'm not a kid anymore, Riley said quietly. Haven't been for a long time. She looked at Kodiak, who'd been standing silently in the crowd. The president nodded once. Approval, support, family. I'll do it, Riley said. I'll help build them all. 6 months later, Winter returned to Wyoming. But Wolf's Rest was ready. The cabin had been expanded. 3 bedrooms, communal kitchen, proper bathroom with hot water, solar panels on the roof, a generator that actually worked, storage shed filled with supplies, and that sign, hand-carved by Ironside, hanging over the front porch. 12 people currently lived there. Brennan Cross now studying psychology online, Ainsley Webb teaching cooking classes in town, 3 veterans working construction, an elderly man named Harold who'd lost his house to medical debt, a teenager named Riley who'd been kicked out by religious parents, 2 recovering addicts, a single mother with twin boys, a family of broken pieces becoming Hometuma. Riley stood on the porch watching snowfall. She was 18 now, legal adult, but she felt decades older. Behind her, laughter echoed from the cabin. Brennan was teaching the twins how to play chess. Ainsley was baking cookies. The veterans were arguing about football. Normal sounds, happy sounds. An engine rumbled in the distance. Riley's hand moved to the rifle by the door. Old habits, but she recognized that engine, that particular rumble. Ironside emerged from the falling snow like a ghost, then another bike and another. 20 Hells Angels riding through a blizzard to reach her. Kodiak was in the lead. Couldn't let you spend Christmas alone, Ironside called out, grinning through his beard. I'm not alone. No, Kodiak agreed, dismounting. You're definitely not. The angels began unloading supplies. Food, presents, a Christmas tree strapped to one of the bikes. Within minutes, the cabin was overflowing with bodies and laughter and the smell of pine. Mama Bear pulled Riley into a crushing hug. Look at you, all grown up, running your own sanctuary, making us proud. I had help. Yeah, you did, and you'll keep having help forever. Near midnight, there was a knock on the door. Riley opened it to find Sienna and Lily standing in the falling snow. We couldn't miss Christmas with Wolf Girl, Lily announced, rushing inside. Sienna hung back. I hope it's okay. We drove 6 hours, but Lily insisted. She made you something. Lily thrust a wrapped package into Riley's hands. Open it. Open it. Inside was a drawing, not crayons this time, colored pencils. Careful detail. A portrait of Riley standing in front of Wolf's Rest. Behind her, 100 motorcycles. Above her, an actual wolf with angel wings. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, My hero, love Lily. I'm going to hang this on my wall, Riley said, her voice thick. Good. Lily hugged her legs. Because you're my family. Sienna's eyes were wet. We both are, forever. The cabin filled with more people than it was designed to hold. Angels, residents, visitors, family. Kodiak found Riley on the porch around 1 in the morning. She'd slipped outside for air, overwhelmed by the noise and love and sheer presence of so many people. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just processing. It's a lot. It's everything. Riley looked at him. A year ago I was alone, completely alone, and now you've got 100 brothers, a dozen residents, families across 6 states who consider you a hero, and 13 sanctuaries being built in your name. Inspired by, Riley corrected, not in my name. Same thing. Kodiak pulled an envelope from his vest. This came yesterday from the Hells Angels Governing Council, National Leadership. Riley took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside a letter on official club letterhead, Riley Margaret Ashford, by unanimous vote of the Governing Council, Wolf's Rest is hereby recognized as the first official Hells Angels sanctuary. You are appointed guardian with full authority over operations, expansion, and leadership. Furthermore, the council commits $500,000 annually to support sanctuary expansion across the western United States. Goal 20 locations within 10 years. You have shown us what we can become, what we should have always been. Ride forever, the Governing Council, $500,000, Riley whispered. Every year, for as long as you need it. Kodiak's voice was gruff with emotion. You changed us, Riley. Changed what it means to be a Hells Angel. We're not just outlaws anymore. We're protectors, builders, family. I didn't change anything. You saved a dying man with fishing line. You fought a drug cartel. You built a sanctuary from nothing. You inspired 13 more. Kodiak put his hand on her shoulder. You changed of everything. Inside, someone started singing, off-key, drunken Christmas carols. Come on, Kodiak said. Your family's waiting. They went back inside, into the warmth, into the laughter, into the family that Riley had chosen and that had chosen her. Ironside caught her as she entered, pulled her aside. His eyes were serious. I have something for you, he said. Been carrying it for months, waiting for the right time. He pulled a small leather pouch from his vest. Inside, a silver necklace, a wolf pendant with angel wings. I had this made after the canyon. Kodiak's daughter, Evelyn, she's a silversmith in her spare time. She made it for you. He fastened it around Riley's neck. The pendant rested over her heart. Warm, heavy, real. You're not just Wolf Girl anymore, Ironside said. Your legacy, your hope, your proof that one person can change the world. I'm just me. Yeah, and that's more than enough. Spring came slowly to Wyoming. Riley stood on her porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold and pink. Wolf's Rest was quiet this morning. Most of the winter guests had moved on, but new ones would come. They always did. A car appeared on the road below, beaten, smoking. It pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. A man emerged, mid-50s, rough hands, hopeless eyes, carrying everything he owned in a plastic bag. Is this Wolf's Rest? He asked. Riley set down her coffee and walked toward him. It is. What's your name? Marcus. Lost my job 8 months ago. Wife left. Kids won't talk to me. Been living in my car. Someone at a shelter said maybe there was a place. There is. Riley extended her hand. I'm Riley. Welcome home. She led him toward the cabin. Behind her, more engines sounded in the distance. More travelers, more lost souls. The cycle continued. 6 wolves had circled a bleeding man in the snow. A lonely girl had made a choice, and 100 Hell's Angels had ridden back to thank her. But the real miracle wasn't the rescue, wasn't the battle, wasn't even the brotherhood forged in blood. The real miracle was what came after. A girl who learned that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to let others stand with you. A club that remembered why they started riding. A place called Wolf's Rest, where broken pieces became whole. And a legacy that would ripple across mountains and states and hundreds of lives for decades to come. Riley Ashford, Wolf Girl, Guardian Angel, Playmate of the Flame, stood at the center of it all. Not because she was special, not because she was chosen, but because she'd made a choice on a frozen night in Wyoming to save a stranger's life. And that choice changed everything. The road stretches on forever. The engines never stop roaring, and Wolf Girl is always waiting, with coffee brewing and the door open wide, ready to welcome the next lost soul home. Because that's what family does. They find you, they keep you, they never let go.